one of the biggest lessons I think I learned from that journey was my need for control. And sometimes God will try to get our attention in a lower level and we ignore it. And so sometimes it takes that high level, high intense situation to show you what he's trying to get your attention on. And infertility was it.
What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence here with another episode of Watch God Work. Today, I have our sister, Destiny Thomas. What's going on, sis?
Hi, what's going on? Thank you so much, Lawrence, for having me. I so appreciate it.
I'm so refreshed for the work that you're doing, given the time that we're living in and people just really needing guidance beyond their own capacity. She's known as the Prayerpist, seeing prayer as true power. We're gonna kick off how we normally kick off. Who is Destiny Thomas?
I am first and foremost a daughter of the Most High, but I am a wife to Kareem Thomas, who will be celebrating 11 years this year. I am a mother to my two miracle babies, Kareem Jr. and Destin. And I say miracles because I actually struggled with infertility before. I'm a mother to a dog pup, Diamond Elise Thomas. She has a full name. And I'm somebody that is truly an advocate for those who struggle with infertility, but those who struggle with knowing God for themselves, and setting them free from the bondage of the juror or judge of God, and really getting to know him from the graceful, merciful, loving, protecting Father that he is. So that really is who I am and who I embody to be.
I think this is the story of the time. You know, part of my story, I recognized that there was an imbalance between what I invested to get to know about my skill set, my career, my business ventures, my life. But when I looked at my pursuit of God, I felt shame. But what was it about God early at that stage that I recognize that I'm going to need God?
14 was when I had an encounter with God for myself. So I've always been a challenger. So I would see people get super excited about serving God and crying and all that. And that was cute. You know, it was cute. But I was like, Lord, I'm going to grow up and have real problems. And I'm going to need to know you for myself. And I can't pull off of her cry or her shout, you know? So I said, God, if you're really as real as they preach about you and say about you, then I want to challenge you. And I said, God, right now, my father's not in my life. And I don't know where he is. I don't even think he knows where I am, because my mother was in a domestic abusive relationship. So she left and nobody really knew where we were. And I said, so God, if you're really real, I want you to reconnect my father and I by my 16th birthday. I gave him very specifics. And I heard a very subtle voice say, I'll do it. At that time, I thought it was just my thoughts. But when he really did it, I knew it was God. And I knew I heard from God, and I knew he was real. And I had an experience with God that no one could tell me was not true.
I do think that's instructive, right? For people, regardless of where you're at, to just say, not so much that I'm putting God to the test, but God has to become real to you. And so God becomes real. You kind of see this thing going on.
Of course, I dealt with, the filling the void of the dad not being there, really, the identity of really, who am I? Why me? You know, God, why is my father not a part of my life? I dealt with the not wanting anything to do with God, because I really didn't understand what he was doing. I did a lot of wanting to save people, a lot of it, a lot of, God made me this way. I even had a little slogan with it that God created me to see the masterpiece before it hit the canvas, before the paint hit the canvas. That's what I used to say all the time. And but I had to realize that there was some truth to that. God did create me for certain nurturing capabilities, but he didn't create me to be God. And I tried to be God for a lot of people, so much so that God even called me a pillow at one time. He said, Destiny, you have a godlike complex. You're a pillow. He said, everybody needs that rock bottom moment where they come to me, but you always come in and save them before they have it. And that broke me in a way. It broke me because I'm like, God, I don't want to be you because I can't. But yeah, during that period, I found myself in relationships, and if I be really transparent, with a lot of older men, a lot of, I mean, 9, 10 years my senior. And I was very wise. I want to be very clear. I've always been ahead of my age because of circumstances and situations. But when I dug a little bit deeper, it was always leading back to you wanted that protection and that security that your father should have gave you.
One of my sisters, Coach Jesse, shout out to my sister, Coach Jesse, right? Kind of in this space of, infertility and wrestling through that and all the things that she went through. Did you explore counseling or your own journey with just counseling and healing before your infertility journey, or was that a accelerator of, okay?
That was the accelerator. Okay. I felt that my body was rejecting me. I felt like God was rejecting me because I had served God my whole life at this point. I did it the quote unquote right way. I got married. I had a house. I had a very good paying job. My husband had a good paying job. I even had a Mercedes-Benz minivan. So I even had the car for the time.
You into the Toyota Sienna?
Having a child, okay?
Yeah, me.
I had the Mercedes-Benz R500, okay? I had the Mercedes van for kids, and I didn't have a kid. So I just felt rejected by God. And I felt like from the outside in, I had everything. And that's a hard thing to live up to when everyone is like, well, why are you putting so much emphasis on a baby when you have everything that people want? You have money, you travel, you this. It was my identity. I felt like, if we be honest, women are taught that you're here to produce children. Like at some point in your life, that's what you're to do. You're here to be a mother. Not only that, but me and my husband were friends before we got married, and we had very intimate conversations. And I knew that was a desire of his as it was mine. And so I'm like, God, you had me marry this man, and you gave him a broken woman. Like, why would you do that? One of the biggest lessons I think I learned from that journey was my need for control. And sometimes God will try to get our attention in a lower level, and we ignore it. And so sometimes it takes that high level, high intense situation to show you what he's trying to get your attention on. And infertility was it for me. I needed control so much so that I spent thousands of dollars and went into, a lot of debt for infertility because I wanted to control it. I wanted to be able for a doctor to say, do this, jump through this hoop, and I'll get you a result. And that didn't work. That didn't happen.
Was that the bridge for you? Was it because look at the house, look at the trappings and the visual of success? You have everything. You have everything, and yet and still there was just this lesson. There was this conversation with God. God was revealing something to you about informing you through that. Is that why you kind of focus on millennial successful women?
The bridge was mainly, from my journey. It was to be in this position where on paper you have everything, but in actuality you have nothing. Because in reality I had, like I said, everybody thought I had everything, but there was this void that was not being filled because I had what other people called success, not what I called success. I've always been a person that loves family, that loves intimacy. I used to tell my job all the time, I'm only here for the paycheck, but if my husband calls me and needs me to come home, I will leave in a heartbeat because that is what success is to me. My household being a household, a home, right? But some people it's the money, right? And so I directly focus on those people because we have gotten to a position where we allow the world to tell us where our happiness is, and not be true to who we truly are. And so a lot of people are successful because their bank account says one thing, but in actuality, your desire is to have a child and you've been trying for years and suffering in silence. Or your true desire is to be married, but you are so focused on making the money because that's what people are telling you to do that you haven't went and got the healing necessary to be the woman that you need to be for the man that God is trying to send you, right? And so that's why I focus on those particular people because a lot of people have gotten to a point where we allow money to cover up truth. And it's in those deep, intimate, inner healing moments that you realize that you've been living a lie for a very long time. And that part of you that is seen on your pillow at night in the bedroom, you now need to bring to the forefront to actually confront it and deal with it. Ooh. God told me one time in prayer that there's 3 levels of healing, right? And unfortunately, a lot of us only get to level 2. Because we like to be led by our feelings, right? And so level 1 is knowing that something traumatic happened. And traumatic could be something as simple as your parent just working too much, because we like to say what is traumatic and what isn't. Traumatic is what's traumatic to you, right? And so it's knowing that something traumatic has happened and you're usually moved by it emotionally. You still get angry by it or cry about it. There's an emotion that happens when you talk about it or when it's brought to your attention. And then level 2 is usually what we get in therapy, which is what I got in infertility. It's usually when they can give you language. You can learn coping mechanisms. You can learn, okay, I'm dealing with abandonment. I know that because I deal with rejection or abandonment, when my husband leaves the room in an argument, I'm being triggered. So I need to learn how to communicate that differently. But the thing about coping mechanisms, they come to an expiration at some point. And for me, it was when I got married, and it was when I had children, because now I'm living with a mirror in front of my face of my flaws, right? And so where therapy comes in, and the reason why I usually focus on the 6-figure millennial women is because they usually have went through those channels, right? And that's why they feel they're successful. I've healed, I've dealt with these things, but there's still something kind of, I've done the work, but there's still something kind of blocking them. And so where therapy comes in is God now will identify the seed. So I knew for years from therapy that I was dealing with rejection and abandonment. But God said to me one time in prayer, when I was going through the therapy process with him, he said, Destiny, but you've never asked me where the seed was planted from it. I was like, huh? And then I asked him, and he said, Destiny, it wasn't just the fact that your father wasn't in your life, but the seed was planted in the womb when your mother told him she was pregnant with you, and he chose to not be a part of your life in that very moment. And that was just different than just my dad leaving, right? It then gave me verbiage to what to take in prayer. It allowed me to say, God, now that you brought this to my remembrance and to my knowledge, God, show me how to walk out of that. Show me how to be healed from it. So the 3rd level is therapy. And the reason why is because then you allow the Holy Spirit in to uproot and resoil that area. So now you're fruitful. So now I can write a book about it and it's a testimony. So now I can go public speak about it and it's a testimony. And now I'm using what the enemy put in or had happened to hurt me or to hold me back to actually bring freedom to others. So that's the difference. And that's why I like to make it clear. No, I'm a strong advocate for therapy and those things, because you need that way to communicate what you're feeling and not be told your feelings are lies or your emotions aren't real, which is what sometimes happens in the church, right? Oh, those feelings aren't true, right? But then you also need that church perspective, because we have to understand we are spiritual beings. We are in a spiritual war. So if you don't incorporate the two, there's a part of you that won't be operating to your maximum potential, whether you agree with it or not. And that's what I found.
I grieve for our people. If I tore my ACL, just because I'm going to rehab and stuff doesn't mean I can still play ball in the NBA anymore, right? So yes, you're doing the work, but it's hard. It takes a long time to unravel 35, 40 years of things. And so a lot of it is just like, no, just don't stop too early, or don't think too highly of where you're at. That journey needs to happen, because people will be the recipients of your healing or lack thereof. If you could speak on a megaphone, what would you say prophetically into this time, like that people need to pay attention to and be mindful?
I would say that find a way to get away from the noise. It's just real noisy right now. And a clear instruction that God gave me at the top of this year, end of last year, was, Destiny, wherever the noise is, I am not. And in this time, I need you to be intentional about coming to me regularly for direction. So that is one main thing I would say. But the other thing I would say is, I'll use an analogy or I don't know, this image that God gave me. And that's really where my relationship with him turned. And he said, Destiny, I'm heartbroken, I'm disheartened, I'm upset, and I'm frustrated. And I'm like, well, God, looking at the world, you got a lot of reasons to be, but enlighten me, right? And he said, I said, why? And he said, because Destiny, not those who don't say that I'm their father, but those who call me their father, their actions say that they believe I'm a deadbeat father. I was like, okay. Tell me how to, I don't know if I want to ask, but Lord, tell me what you mean by that. And this is truly how we talk to each other. And he said, because those who call me their father, they say I'm always on time. They say I'm a perfect father. They say always I have a purpose and a plan for their lives. But a purpose and a plan equates to an expectation. And what kind of good father would produce a fruit and have an expectation for that fruit, but not leave them any blueprint of how to achieve it? A deadbeat father produces a fruit and leaves them to wander the world and figure it out on their own. And my children are out here picking their jobs, picking their careers, picking this and picking that, and wanting me to rubber stamp it on the back end. And I was like, God, it can't be that easy. You want us to just come to you every day and ask you what you want of us and do it? And he said, but it is. And that is honestly what that process taught me. I'm very intentional about, and it may sometimes be at the top of the morning, sometimes in the middle of the day. I have a newborn, so things switch. But I'm like, God, you gave me today. What is it that you want me to do with today? And I find that in society, we focus so much on how my year's going to end, how next month's going to go. No, focus on today. Did you speak to the person he wanted you to speak to today? Did you go live when he wanted you to go live so those two people would hear about the God you serve? And I realized in being intentional about my day, God would give me 4 things to do when I used to have 20 things. But those 4 things he gave me would hit everything on my 20 list because he's just that intentional. And my year would end better than I could ever imagine because I was always being intentional about doing what it is he wanted me to do, which takes me back to the original question, being away from the noise and being intentional about being where God is calling you to be. I think we focus so much on why they doing that or how they doing that, or is that what God called you to do? Are you doing what he called you to do? Why are you focused on what I'm doing? Right? Because I have to answer to him. And so I would say, get away from the noise, really take that time to be intentional about seeking him, because he, whether you hear him audibly, whether you hear him in his word, God's speaking. Is just, are you being still enough to hear him?
Bam. That's a word to that's a word to end on. It's kind of like, is it too noisy, or it's just like, is God not speaking, or is your life too noisy? Right? It's so much of that. What do you have coming up, and how do people find you and support you and just and join you on this journey that you're on? How do people do that?
So you can find me on Instagram at realizing_destiny. You can find me on Facebook at Destiny Realizing Destiny Thomas, or on my website at realizingdestiny.com. I also have a podcast, Realizing Destiny. So anything searching Realizing Destiny, you'll find me.
Like, on behalf of those who are watching and who have or are listening, thank you. Just thank you for being faithful to this work. It takes courage to do something and step into something where there isn't like a blueprint. There's not design, but ultimately that it graduates beyond, okay, this helped me and now I'm good, to how could this help other people? And I think in a time that people need healing, the triggers, the realities, the things that would cause people to be unhealed from cradle all the way to the middle is real. And so I thank you that you have kind of taken the banner up and answered the call to do that work. And so in all things, I pray that, we will continue to pray with and for you. I thank you that you make space to hear from God, and also to see that God is working in your life and he's working in the world. And so, my sister, we love you. I love you. All blessings to you and your family. And I look forward to a future conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
No problem, my sister. Take care.